Um, I want you to do something for a second. Just look around the room you're in right now. Like, look at your phone or maybe a coffee cup on your desk or even just a window.
Right, just something ordinary.
Yeah, exactly. And I want you to ask yourself, what actually makes that object a thing? And I don't mean, what is it made of, like atoms or plastic or whatever. I mean, how do you actually know it is distinctly separated from the space around it?
It's one of those things we just take completely for granted.
We really do. Like,
Yeah.
when you reach out to grab that coffee cup, your brain effortlessly identifies where the cup ends and the air begins.
Yeah.
But what makes a thing an actual distinct thing in the first place?
I mean, it sounds like a question a toddler might ask, right? But it is genuinely one of the most profound mysteries you can probe about reality. We are so used to just, walking through the world, cataloging what exists, that we rarely stop to ask how existence even gets sliced up into distinct pieces. We take the boundaries as a given.
And questioning those boundaries is the whole mission of our deep dive today. We're exploring a truly fascinating philosophical paper. It's titled Internalism, Co-originality, and the Conditions of Difference.
Which is a bit of a mouthful, I know.
Oh, totally. But the content is just mind-blowing because usually when you dive into metaphysics, you are just doing inventory. You're asking what exists. Like, do numbers exist? Do minds exist? Is it all just matter bouncing around?
Right, the classic catalog of stuff.
Exactly. But this paper flips the script completely. Instead of doing inventory, we are asking what must already be true for anything to be knowable, meaningful, or describable at all.
And the stakes here are incredibly high. Because this isn't just, academic navel-gazing. If we shift our focus from what is there to what makes distinction possible, it fundamentally changes how we understand the universe.
Yeah, we are going to see how this single shift in perspective completely rewrites classic debates about, well, how language works, the limits of human knowledge, the eerie perfection of mathematics, and like the actual substance of the physical universe.
It really touches everything.
It does. Okay, so let's unpack this. To understand this totally new approach to reality, we have to start with one specific concept, which is difference. The core internalist idea presented in the sources is that there is no meaning without difference.
Right. For something to be distinct, it requires a contrast. It requires a relationship or an exclusion. The paper actually states it beautifully. It says, a difference cannot be a difference from nowhere.
Wow.
Yeah. You cannot have a freestanding distinction just floating in an absolute void. If something is distinct, it has to be distinct under some form of contrast. I mean, it needs a background.
The analogy that popped into my head when reading this was trying to draw a white line on a white whiteboard.
Oh, that's perfect.
Right. Because if you use a white dry erase marker on a whiteboard, the line literally doesn't exist to your eye. Without a contrasting background, without a frame of a different color, there is no line. You need a field of difference for the thing to even manifest.
That visual captures the mechanism exactly. And what's fascinating is where that logic inevitably leads us. It leads to this principle of co-originality.
Originality.
Yeah. If you need a field of difference to have a distinct thing, then form and content are fundamentally bound together.
Yeah.
I mean, they are distinguishable if we abstract them in our minds, but they're never actually separable in reality.
Because you can't have, mushy, unstructured content without some kind of form bounding it. It would just be an infinite soup.
Exactly. Without form, there is no determinate this rather than that. It's an unintelligible blur. But conversely, you cannot have pure form without content because form is always the form of something.
Right.
It's the form of some distinction or relation.
Yeah.
As the paper puts it, distinction is the co-birth of form and content. They arrive together at the exact same time.
So connecting this back to you, the listener, in your daily life, every email you read, every object you pick up, every sound you hear, it only exists because of the contrasts framing it. Your reality is entirely built on this co-birth of form and content.
It's everywhere.
It is. But here's where it gets really interesting, because I want to push back on this a bit. Let's apply this to language, to the words we use every single day to communicate. If every difference requires this background frame, what about basic definitions?
You're touching on one of the biggest debates in 20th century philosophy here.
Right. I'm thinking of the philosopher Quine. He famously attacked the idea of analytic truth. Things that are supposedly true just by their definition.
Like all bachelors are unmarried.
Yes, exactly. If I say all bachelors are unmarried, traditional philosophy says that's a universal truth based purely on the definitions of the words. But Quine argued that meanings aren't these rigid, floating objects locked in a vault somewhere. Language is messy. It changes over time based on how society uses it.
Very true.
So aren't meanings just based purely on societal habit? Like, how can a permanent frame exist if the rules of language are constantly shifting around?
So Quine's critique was a massive earthquake in philosophy. But the internalist response we're looking at today is just brilliant. It agrees with Quine that meanings aren't magical floating objects, but it entirely rejects the idea that meaning just bottoms out in chaotic societal use.
Okay, so what do they suggest instead?
The internalist argues that meaning requires a semantic frame.
A semantic frame. Let me see if I have this. Is it like a temporary set of rules we all agree to play by?
It's more profound than just rules, actually. It's a field of differences, roles, and exclusions. Think about that sentence again. All bachelors are unmarried. That string of sounds is literally just noise to you unless there's already a cognitive frame in place where the bundle of concepts picked out by bachelor can be identified with the bundle picked out by unmarried man.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, ordinary language is definitely messy and shifting. But to make a sentence analytic, to say it's true by definition, we are actively narrowing that interpretive field. We are declaring certain differences to be inactive for the moment.
Okay, that makes sense.
The author notes this perfectly. The analytic does not escape interpretation. It disciplines interpretation. It is controlled equivalence inside a frame.
Oh, wow. Disciplines interpretation. That makes a lot of sense. So analyticity isn't meaning falling from the sky. It's just us tightly controlling the frame so we can actually communicate without ambiguity.
Exactly.
But wait, if I need a cognitive frame to understand a definition, don't I need like another frame to understand the rules of the first frame? I feel like this could turn into an infinite loop of frames. Where does it stop?
Well, it stops at the very architecture of your mind. This semantic frame, when pushed deeper, is actually an epistemic field. Think about what it takes for you to read a definition in a dictionary.
Okay.
You already have to grasp the raw concepts of identity, difference, negation, and rule following. You have to intuitively know what it means for something to not be something else.
Oh, man. So I can't even learn my first word as a child unless my mind already has the architecture of difference built into it.
That's the core argument. Meaning doesn't just bottom out in societal use forever. A frame can stabilize meaning, but it cannot create meaning from scratch unless some differences are already terminally available to your mind.
Right.
Distinction and knowledge are not two unrelated things. They are just separated by abstraction. The paper says, a semantic frame is what an epistemic field looks like under linguistic articulation. And further, distinction is proto-epistemic. Knowledge is explicit distinction.
Distinction is proto-epistemic. So the very act of distinguishing the table from the chair is the foundational building block of knowledge itself.
Yes, absolutely.
But if that's true, like if my brain has to supply this framing architecture just to understand a shape or a word, am I ever actually seeing the real world? Or am I just seeing my own mental framing? Because that sounds like we are permanently trapped in our own heads.
You've just walked right into the trap that Immanuel Kant famously set in the 18th century.
Oh, the whole thing in itself problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kant argued that we only ever see appearances, right? Because our minds process everything through categories like space and time, we only see reality filtered. Therefore, we can never know the ultimate unfiltered reality, the thing in itself.
That was his claim, yeah.
So if we constantly rely on these frames of difference we've been talking about, aren't we just looking at shadows on a cave wall?
That is the standard worry. But this paper argues that Kant, while brilliant, took a disastrous wrong turn.
Really?
Yeah. Kant was absolutely right to ask about the conditions of possible experience. He was right that we bring frames to the table. But where his theory becomes suspect is when it turns the thing in itself into this dark, metaphysical source that dictates appearances while remaining absolutely, completely outside of any field of relation.
Oh, wait, I see where this is going. Based on our core principle from the beginning, a difference cannot be a difference from nowhere.
Exactly, you nailed it. If this ultimate reality, this thing in itself, is completely outside of all relation, how can it be distinct? How can it have any determinate nature at all?
It can't.
Right, it becomes a meaningless concept. The internalist insight here is profound. Appearance doesn't mean shadow. We have this bad habit of thinking that if our access to something is conditioned by our senses, it must be fake or obscured. But appearance is simply reality manifest under conditions.
Let me put this in everyday terms. When I look at my morning coffee, I am seeing it through human eyes, processing its heat through human nerves. Kant might say I'm missing the true coffee, but this paper is saying that my human filter isn't hiding the reality of the coffee. The filter is the only way the coffee can actually show up as anything specific.
That's a fantastic way to put it. The text says conditioned access is not a failure of access. It is the only kind of access that could be determinate.
Wow.
Yeah, if you removed all conditions, all frames, all relations, if you tried to view the universe with no perspective at all, you wouldn't be left with a pure, brilliant, unfiltered reality. You would be left with a completely unintelligible void. To be real is to be related.
That completely flips Kant on his head. I really like that. It feels much less claustrophobic.
It's very liberating.
But if reality isn't hidden in the shadows and is instead actually showing up through these conditions and distinctions, we have to talk about mathematics.
Ah, the great translation between mind and matter.
Yes. Because there is this famous problem in philosophy called the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. The physicist Eugene Wigner wrote a whole paper on it.
It's a classic.
Right. Mathematics is a purely human, formal, mental invention. We made it up in our heads. Yet when we use it to build a bridge or calculate the orbit of a satellite or study black holes, it is incredibly, almost terrifyingly accurate at describing the physical universe.
It really is.
So why does our mental math map so perfectly onto physical stars? Doesn't this prove Platonism?
You mean the idea that math exists in some separate, magical realm of perfect forms, and our physical universe just happens to be a messy copy of it?
Exactly. If human math maps perfectly onto quantum fields, doesn't that imply there is a separate realm of perfect mathematical forms out there that the universe is obeying?
It's a very tempting thought, and honestly, many physicists lean that way. But internalism completely reverses this mystery. Platonism externalizes form.
Okay.
It assumes that because mathematical form is objective and universal, it must live in its own separate heaven. But as the author sharply points out, Platonism mistakes objectivity for separateness.
I'm not sure I follow. If math is objective, how does internalism explain it working so well without needing, like, a Platonic heaven to store all the blueprints?
Let's go back to our core principle. Distinction is the co-birth of form and content. If the physical world is a realm of actual distinct things, if a star is distinct from the vacuum of space, if one electron is distinct from another, then the physical world already has form.
Oh, because you need form to have distinction.
Exactly. It has to, otherwise nothing would be distinct. Mathematics works brilliantly precisely because it is the practice of abstracting the formal side of distinction. Math is just the pure study of identity, difference, relation, order, and symmetry.
Oh, man. So when we calculate a tip at a restaurant or engineer a bridge, we aren't imposing some alien mental math onto a messy physical world. We are just recognizing the form that must be there for the physical world to have any distinct objects in it at all.
That's it. I love this quote from the text. Mathematics does not work because reality copies a separate realm of forms. Mathematics works because reality is already form-bearing wherever it is determinate.
That is so cool.
Isn't it? Form is co-present with any possible distinction. You don't need to import it from another dimension. It's built into the very fabric of anything being a thing.
That is incredibly satisfying. It takes the spooky mystery out of it entirely. But wait, I'm tracking the argument, and I see a massive trap ahead here. So math perfectly maps the form of the universe. I'm with you. But what about the content? What is the actual stuff filling in those mathematical boundaries? Because if we look at strict materialism, which is what most of modern science runs on, it treats everything as physical quantities. Mass, charge, spin, velocity.
Right. And this raises a critical question. It's where the limits of strict materialism become glaringly obvious.
Because if I'm understanding this co-birth of form and content, quantity-like ratios, magnitudes, structural relationships is entirely form-like. It's math.
Yes.
So if the content of the universe is purely quantitative, doesn't the content just collapse into pure form? And if that happens, we lose actual determinacy. We're back to a white line on a white whiteboard. There's no actual stuff left, just an empty wireframe.
You've hit the nail on the head. If the content of the universe is only quantitative, we lose intrinsic determinacy. It becomes a universe of pure structure with nothing actually being structured.
Right.
If we admit that content must be qualitative, meaning there's actual felt, experienced quality in the world, what philosophers sometimes call qualia, like the redness of an apple or the bitter taste of coffee, then strict quantitative materialism is definitively false. It leaves out half the equation.
Okay, but I know philosophers hate being backed into corners. If matter isn't enough, what if someone tries to invent a third option? Like, what if they say, sure, the universe isn't just math, but it's not mind or experience either. The content of the universe is just some mysterious third thing. It just is.
The paper warns that this is a massive philosophical trap. It risks becoming total epistemic nihilism, or what is sometimes called dark quiddity.
Dark quiddity. That sounds like a Marvel villain. What does that actually mean in practice?
Imagine trying to explain how a car engine works, and instead of talking about pistons and fuel, you say there is an invisible, silent, weightless ghost under the hood that makes the wheels turn.
Huh. Okay.
That's dark quiddity. It's assigning a hidden nature to reality that differs from everything else without any intelligible way of differing. It's just a placeholder word for ignorance. The quote to remember here is, "The third option tries to make mystery do the work of content."
Make mystery do the work of content. That is quite a mic drop.
It really is. But we have to be careful not to make this a crude argument. The point isn't just a simplistic, well, humans have feelings and qualia, therefore materialism is false.
Right. It's deeper than that.
Much deeper.
Yeah.
The rigorous point is that form without content is literally inconceivable. We have absolutely no examples of pure form without content anywhere in our experience.
Let me test that, actually.
Yeah.
What about a pure abstraction? If I close my eyes and just think of the concept of a triangle, not a wooden triangle or a drawn triangle, just the pure mathematical rules of a triangle, isn't that pure form?
It feels like it.
Yeah.
But try to actually hold that concept in your mind. Think of it like trying to visualize the rules of chess without visualizing a board or any pieces.
Oh.
Can't do it. To even conceive of the abstraction of a triangle, you rely on a mental field in which that abstraction is held as this abstraction rather than another abstraction.
Wow.
The very act of holding the thought requires the content of your own mental field, your consciousness, to sustain it. As the author states, pure form is content under erasure. You can try to erase the content to look only at the form, but the content is still the mental paper you are drawing on.
That is wild. Pure form is content under erasure. You can't have rules without pieces to play the game.
Exactly.
So if materialism collapses into pure form, and traditional dualism, the old idea of saying mind and matter are completely separate realms, is a messy nightmare of trying to duct tape two different universes together.
Yeah.
What's left? There is one final escape hatch I can think of that some modern thinkers use. Neutral monism.
Ah, yes, the ultimate attempt to split the difference.
Right. Can't we just say the underlying stuff of the universe is totally neutral? Like it's neither mind nor matter, but just a neutral base fabric that somehow gives rise to both.
The paper deconstructs this escape hatch beautifully by presenting a fatal dilemma for neutral monism.
Okay, let's hear it.
If this supposed neutral base is too thin, meaning it's truly completely neutral and devoid of any experiential quality, it utterly fails to explain our actual rich conscious experience. You can't get blood from a stone, and you can't get the vibrant, undeniable experience of seeing the color red from a totally thin, mathematically neutral base. The math doesn't suddenly wake up and start feeling things.
Okay, but what if the neutral base isn't thin? What if this neutral fabric is incredibly rich and full of potential?
Well, if it is rich enough to explain manifestation and internal relation, if it already contains the seeds of experience, then it isn't really neutral at all.
Oh.
It basically turns into idealism, the idea that reality is fundamentally mental, or panpsychism, the idea that some form of mind is everywhere. The author gives a brilliant summary of this. Neutral monism may be compresentism with the idealist conclusion withheld.
Hold on, define compresentism for me real quick.
Compresentism is the idea that the universe is built on a shared, interconnected field of experience or relation.
So they are basically saying, yes, the universe is an interconnected field of experience, but they are withholding the idealist conclusion.
Yes, exactly.
It's like they essentially built a theory that relies on a common experiential field, but they are just too afraid of the academic backlash to name its true manifest character. They don't want to say the M word mind. They call it neutral to sound scientific, but it's secretly just consciousness.
That's the implication, yeah.
Yeah.
It keeps the common field required for things to be distinct, but refuses to admit what that field actually must be made of to function.
I'm just marveling at where we've ended up here. I mean, we started by just asking how a coffee cup on your desk is distinct from the air around it.
A long journey from the coffee cup.
Seriously. And by following that one rule, that a difference cannot be a difference from nowhere, we've navigated through the breakdown of strict materialism, we've dismantled Kant's hidden reality, and we've explained why human math works on distant galaxies.
It's a very powerful framework.
It is. The grand summary of this entire deep dive really comes down to redefining what metaphysics even is. The paper states, metaphysics should study the conditions of possible distinction, not merely the catalog of distinguished things.
And that requires a fundamental shift in how we approach philosophy and science. The true meta in metaphysics is the return of the frame into the content. Whenever you formulate a theory about the universe, you must account for the conditions that make your own distinctions possible.
Right.
You can't just talk about the universe as if you were a disembodied eye looking at it from nowhere. The subject of metaphysics has to be the conditions that make objecthood, meaning knowledge, form, content, and experience possible in the first place.
It's like realizing you can't study a painting by only cataloging the colors of the paint. You have to study the canvas, the frame holding it tight, and the light in the room allowing your eyes to perceive the colors. You have to study the context.
Beautifully said. Any theory that ignores its own frame is fundamentally incomplete. You can't separate the observer's capacity for distinction from the distinctions being observed.
This has been an absolutely mind-bending journey, but before we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought experiment to mull over on your own today. We started by looking at an object near you, your phone, a cup, a steering wheel. We established that its thingness depends entirely on everything around it, the space it doesn't occupy, the colors it doesn't possess. Its existence relies on a background frame.
Right.
So I want you to take that exact same lens and turn it inward. If every single distinction you make requires a background frame to exist, what is the ultimate background frame of your own conscious mind? When you wake up in the morning and recognize yourself as a distinct you, separate from the rest of the world, what is the silent, unstated condition that makes you distinct? What is the frame holding the content of your own self?
That is a question that will keep you awake at night. In the best possible way, of course.
Thank you for taking this incredibly deep philosophical dive with us. Keep questioning the frames around you, and we'll catch you next time.